Racist cop kicks black woman out of a train, but her retaliation makes history. In this eye-opening video, we delve into a shocking incident that took place on a bustling train. A racist police officer unjustly targets a black woman, demanding her removal from the train. This act of blatant discrimination sparks outrage and draws significant public attention. If you are enthusiastic about this narrative, please inform us. If you appreciated the video, press 1. If not, select 0. Your feedback genuinely motivates me to collect additional uplifting and significant narratives.
Gaze calm yet alert as she navigated the throng of travelers. Erica was a seasoned professional in the railway industry, a regional operations manager with years of experience under her belt. Tonight, however, she wasn't dressed to stand out. There was no badge on display, no indication of her position or authority. She was traveling incognito, as she often did when conducting personal assessments of her team and the train routes. Her goal was to observe the efficiency of the service and the behavior of her staff without being recognized. This was her way of staying connected to the daily realities of the system she oversaw. As Erica walked toward the platform, she checked her watch. The train was set to depart in 10 minutes, and she liked to be punctual. Her brown leather satchel hung over her shoulder, containing her personal items, a book, and her work tablet, which she always carried in case of emergencies. She scanned the waiting passengers with a practiced eye, noticing the diversity of the crowd. Business people clutching briefcases, students scrolling through their phones, and families juggling luggage and sleepy children. She also noticed a few security personnel positioned along the platform, one of whom caught her attention. Officer Paul Ridge stood near the entrance to the first-class car, his uniform pristine and his demeanor stern. Ridge was a white man in his early 40s with a stocky build and a permanent scowl etched on his face. He had been assigned to the railway security team 2 years prior, after spending nearly a decade in local law enforcement. While Ridge was known for his diligence, his colleagues often whispered about his aggressive attitude and a tendency to target passengers who, in his eyes, didn't belong. His presence was both a source of reassurance and discomfort for those who noticed him. As Erica passed by, Ridge's gaze landed on her. Something about her calm composure seemed to irritate him. She wasn't hurried or flustered like most of the other passengers. Instead, she walked with a sense of purpose, her head held high and her movements deliberate. To Ridge, this confidence was suspicious. He immediately decided she needed to be watched. Erica, unaware of Ridge's scrutiny, continued to the first-class car. She had chosen this section not for its luxury, but for its quiet atmosphere, which would allow her to read and think during the journey. She boarded the train and took a seat near the window, placing her satchel on the seat beside her. From her vantage point, she could see the station's lights reflecting off the polished metal of the train cars and the faint outline of Ridge pacing along the platform. She noticed his rigid posture and sharp glances, but thought little of it. Security officers often carried themselves with an air of authority, and she had encountered plenty of them during her career. The train's conductor announced the final call for boarding, and the last few passengers hurried onto the platform. Erica opened her satchel and pulled out a hardcover book, a piece of historical fiction she had been meaning to finish. As the train's engines hummed to life, she allowed herself a rare moment of relaxation, leaning back in her seat and letting the rhythmic sounds of the station fade into the background. Meanwhile, Ridge continued his patrol, but his attention kept drifting back to Erica. Her presence nagged at him, though he couldn't quite articulate why. She wasn't doing anything overtly suspicious. She was just sitting there, reading her book, minding her own business. But for Ridge, that was part of the problem. She looked too comfortable, too confident, as though she felt entitled to be there. In his mind, that wasn't how people were supposed to behave, especially not someone like her in a space like this. As the train doors slid shut and the carriage lights brightened, Ridge made a snap decision. He would approach her. If she was as innocent as she seemed, she wouldn't mind a few questions. And if she wasn't, Well, it was his job to find out. The train began to move, pulling slowly out of the station before picking up speed. Inside the first-class car, Erica was absorbed in her book, the words transporting her to another time and place. She barely noticed when Ridge entered the carriage, his boots clicking against the polished floor. He paused near the door, scanning the row of passengers before his eyes settled on her. For a moment he hesitated. Something about her calm demeanor made him second-guess himself. But his pride wouldn't let him back down now. Ridge approached Erica, his shadow falling across her as he stood over her seat. She glanced up, her expression neutral but questioning. "Can I help you?" she asked politely, closing her book and placing it on her lap. Ridge crossed his arms, his stance wide and authoritative. "Ticket, please," he demanded, his tone more brusque than necessary. Erica raised an eyebrow, but complied, reaching into her satchel and pulling out her ticket. She handed it to him without a word, watching as he inspected it. Ridge studied the ticket for longer than necessary, looking for any excuse to challenge its validity, but there was nothing out of order. The ticket was legitimate, and it clearly showed her reservation for the first-class car. Still, Ridge wasn't satisfied. He handed the ticket back to her, but didn't move. "What brings you to first class tonight?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Erica's brow furrowed slightly. "I wasn't aware that passengers needed to justify their seating choices," she replied evenly. Her calm response only fueled Ridge's irritation. "Just doing my job," he said sharply. "You don't look like the usual type we get up here." At that, Erica's eyes narrowed. She knew exactly what he meant, but she chose not to react. Instead, she leaned back in her seat, her gaze steady. "Is there anything else I can help you with, officer?" she asked, her tone firm but polite. Ridge felt a flash of anger. Her composed demeanor felt like a challenge, as though she was mocking him. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "People don't usually get defensive unless they have something to hide," he said. Erica met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not being defensive, officer, but I do expect to be treated with the same respect as any other passenger." Ridge straightened, his jaw tightening. For a moment he considered letting it go, but his pride wouldn't allow it. He turned and walked to the end of the carriage, his mind racing. He was determined to find a reason to justify his instincts, no matter what it took. As the train glided smoothly through the city's outskirts, the soft hum of the carriage blended with the quiet murmur of passengers chatting in hushed tones or tapping away on their devices. Erica had resumed reading her book, trying to let go of the brief interaction with Ridge. She recognized his type, men who wore their authority like armor, using it to mask their insecurities or justify their biases. It wasn't her first encounter with someone like him, and she doubted it would be her last. But she also knew how to pick her battles. For now, she focused on her task, observing the train's operations and ensuring the journey progressed without incident. Ridge, on the other hand, was fuming. He had returned to the adjoining car, pacing in the narrow corridor, his thoughts spiraling. To him, Erica's calm and confident demeanor wasn't just unsettling. It was a provocation. She hadn't cowered, hadn't shown the slightest hint of discomfort, and that gnawed at him. Ridge thrived on control, on the subtle power he wielded over others through his position. Yet Erica had stripped him of that power with nothing more than her poise and measured words. It made him feel small, and he hated it. As his frustration mounted, Ridge decided that he needed to act. He couldn't let her sit there as though she owned the place, as though she had the right to challenge him. He didn't care if her ticket was valid. There had to be something about her that wasn't. Nobody was that clean. Convinced that she was hiding something, Ridge resolved to investigate further. He radioed the security hub at the central station, requesting a quick check on her name from the ticket manifest. When the response came back confirming that everything was in order, it only deepened his frustration. He muttered a curse under his breath, unwilling to let it go. By the time Ridge returned to the first-class car, the atmosphere had shifted. Passengers were settling in, some sipping complimentary drinks, others reclining in their spacious seats. Erica remained by the window, her expression serene as she gazed out at the passing scenery. The sight of her composure irritated Ridge even more. He approached her again, this time with less pretense and more aggression. "Ma'am," he said, his tone sharper than before. Erica looked up, her expression neutral but alert. "I need you to step into the aisle for a moment." She blinked, setting her book aside. "Why?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Ridge folded his arms, his posture radiating authority. "It's a routine check. I need to inspect your belongings." Her brow furrowed slightly. "You already checked my ticket. Everything was in order." "This isn't about your ticket," Ridge snapped, his voice rising just enough to draw the attention of nearby passengers. "Now, step into the aisle." Erica took a steadying breath, her instincts kicking in. She knew that engaging in a direct confrontation with him could escalate the situation further, but she also wasn't one to back down easily. "Officer," she began, her voice measured, "I don't see any reason why my belongings should be inspected. I'm a paying passenger, and as far as I'm aware, I haven't done anything to warrant this level of scrutiny." Her words only seemed to inflame Ridge's temper. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low growl. "If you have nothing to hide, then you won't mind cooperating." Erica's eyes narrowed. She could feel the tension building, not just between them but throughout the carriage. Passengers were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, their conversations tapering off as they turned their attention to the unfolding scene. Ridge's aggressive posture and raised voice were impossible to ignore, and Erica knew that she was now under the scrutiny of more than just one man. Slowly, she stood, keeping her movements deliberate and unthreatening. "Fine," she said, her voice steady. "I'll step into the aisle, but I want to make it clear that I do not consent to an unnecessary search of my belongings." Ridge smirked, mistaking her compliance for submission. "Duly noted," he said curtly, motioning for her to step aside. He reached for her satchel, which still rested on the seat. But before he could grab it, Erica placed her hand on the strap. "I'll handle my own belongings," she said firmly, meeting his gaze with unwavering resolve. For a moment, they locked eyes and Ridge hesitated. There was something in her expression, an unyielding confidence, a quiet but undeniable authority, that made him falter. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. He reached again, this time tugging the bag from her grip with unnecessary force. Erica didn't resist, but her jaw tightened as she watched him unzip the satchel and begin rifling through it. Her book, a water bottle, a neatly folded scarf, a charger, and a tablet. Ridge picked up the tablet, turning it over in his hands as though expecting to find something incriminating. The sleek device bore the logo of the railway company. Its screen blank. He pressed the power button, but it required a password to unlock. Frustrated, he turned to Erica. "What's this?" he demanded. "It's a work tablet," she replied calmly. "I'm an employee of the railway." Her words gave him pause, but only briefly. "A likely story," he muttered, still clutching the tablet. "And what exactly do you do for the railway?" Erica straightened, her posture commanding despite the tension. "I'm an operations manager," she said. "My job is to ensure the safety and efficiency of this service." Her response caused a ripple of surprise among the passengers who were still observing the interaction. Ridge, however, remained skeptical. "Operations manager, huh?" he said, his tone dripping with disbelief. "And you just happen to be traveling tonight, in first class, with this?" He held up the tablet, fancy piece of equipment. Erica's patience was wearing thin, but she maintained her composure. "Yes, I happen to be traveling tonight because I oversee this route, and that fancy piece of equipment is standard issue for my role. Now, if you're done wasting both of our time, I'd like my belongings back." Ridge's grip on the tablet tightened. He could feel the weight of the passengers' eyes on him, their silent judgment pressing down on him like a physical force. But instead of relenting, he doubled down. "I'm not done," he said, his voice sharp. "For all I know, you could be using this to..." "To what?" Erica interrupted, her voice cutting through his sentence like a blade. To do my job. To ensure that passengers like these, she gestured to the onlookers, have a safe and pleasant journey. Because that's exactly what I'm doing, officer. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Ridge opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. For the first time, he seemed unsure of himself, his bravado faltering under the weight of a conviction. The silence stretched uncomfortably, broken only by the faint hum of the train's engine. Finally, Ridge shoved the tablet back into the satchel and thrust the bag toward Erica. "We'll see about this," he muttered, turning on his heel and marching toward the front of the car. Erica watched him go, her heart pounding in her chest. Though she didn't let it show, she returned to her seat, her hands steady as she placed the satchel beside her. The train continued its journey, the tension in the air slowly dissipating. But Erica knew this wasn't over. Ridge wouldn't let it go, not after the way she had stood her ground. And as much as she hated to admit it, she suspected that things were about to get much worse. The train surged forward into the night, its rhythmic hum, the only sound accompanying the faint murmurs of the passengers in the first-class car. Erica sat upright in her seat, her calm demeanor belying the storm raging within. She wasn't unfamiliar with power struggles. She had faced them her entire career, navigating the systemic challenges that came with her position as a black woman in a predominantly male and white industry. But tonight was different. Tonight she wasn't dealing with subtle microaggressions or veiled condescension. Ridge's behavior was blatant, aggressive, and dangerous. She could still feel the weight of his earlier intrusion, the way he had rifled through her belongings with the air of someone desperate to prove her guilty of something. His accusations had been thinly veiled, his disbelief in her authority palpable. Erica had dealt with skeptics before, those who underestimated her based on her appearance, but Ridge's hostility felt personal. It was more than professional overreach. It was a challenge to her very right to exist in a space he deemed unfit for someone like her. And now, as she watched him retreat to the front of the car, she knew this wasn't the end of it. Ridge was pacing again, his frustration evident in the sharpness of his movements and the clenched fists at his sides. He had been humiliated, his authority questioned not only by Erica, but by the silent stares of the passengers who had witnessed the exchange. He felt cornered, a dangerous state for a man who thrived on control. His mind raced, searching for a way to reassert his dominance, to prove that he was in charge. The fact that Erica's credentials checked out only fueled his rage. It wasn't enough for him to let it go. He needed a reason, any reason, to put her in her place. From her seat, Erica could see him speaking into his radio, his voice low but animated. She couldn't hear the words, but she recognized the posture of a man grasping at straws. Whatever he was planning, she needed to stay prepared. She opened her satchel, pulling out her tablet and powering it on. If Ridge thought she was defenseless, he was mistaken. The device was connected to the railway's central system, giving her access to operational controls and emergency protocols. It was a tool she rarely had to use, but one she was glad to have now. The passengers around her had mostly returned to their routines, though a few still cast glances in her direction, their expressions a mix of curiosity and quiet support. Erica appreciated their restraint. The last thing she needed was for someone to escalate the situation further. She glanced at her watch. They were still an hour from the next major stop. Plenty of time for Ridge to make another move, and for her to prepare for it. She didn't have to wait long. The door to the first-class car slid open, and Ridge strode back in. His expression hardened with determination. He didn't bother with pleasantries this time. Instead, he walked straight to Erica's seat and planted himself firmly in the aisle beside her, his shadow falling across her lap. "Stand up," he barked, his voice echoing through the carriage. The passengers nearest to them froze, their conversations abruptly silenced. Erica looked up from her tablet, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "Excuse me?" she said evenly. "You heard me," Ridge snapped. "Stand up. Now." Erica slowly closed her tablet, placing it carefully on the seat beside her. She rose to her feet, her movements deliberate and measured. She met Ridge's glare without flinching. "Is there a reason for this, officer?" she asked, her tone polite but edged with steel. Ridge stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You're coming with me," he said. "I need to ask you some questions, away from the other passengers." "I've already answered your questions," Erica replied, her voice steady. "And as I've explained, I'm here on official business. Unless you have a legitimate reason to detain me, I suggest you stop this harassment." Ridge's face darkened. "Harassment? You think this is harassment?" His voice grew louder, drawing more attention from the passengers. "I'm doing my job and you're obstructing it." Erica took a deep breath, resisting the urge to snap back. She knew he was trying to provoke her, to elicit a reaction he could use as justification for his behavior. "I'm not obstructing anything," she said. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat, minding my own business. You, on the other hand, are disrupting the journey for everyone in this car." Her words hit their mark, and Ridge's composure cracked. He reached out suddenly, grabbing her arm. The movement was forceful, meant to intimidate, but Erica stood her ground. She didn't pull away, didn't flinch. Instead, she looked down at his hand and then back up at him, her expression cold. "Let go," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. For a moment, Ridge hesitated. There was something in her eyes, a fierce, unyielding strength, that gave him pause. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. He tightened his grip, pulling her toward the aisle. Erica acted instinctively. She twisted her arm free with a sharp motion, stepping back to put distance between them. Her voice was calm but firm as she addressed the other passengers. "You're all witnesses to this man's inappropriate conduct," she said. "I am an authorized employee of this railway, and I will not be treated this way." The passengers exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort palpable. Some murmured quietly, while others simply watched, unsure of what to do. Ridge, however, wasn't deterred. If anything, her defiance only enraged him further. "You're making a big mistake," he growled, taking another step toward her. "If you don't come with me right now, I'll remove you from this train myself." Erica's jaw tightened, but she remained composed. "You're welcome to try," she said, her voice low but laced with warning. "But I assure you it won't end well for you." The tension in the car was suffocating, the air heavy with anticipation. Ridge's hand hovered near his belt, where his handcuffs were clipped. He was seconds away from escalating the situation even further when a voice interrupted. "What the hell is going on here?" The conductor had entered the car, his expression a mix of confusion and frustration. He was a middle-aged man with a neatly trimmed beard and an air of authority. His arrival immediately shifted the dynamic, drawing Ridge's attention away from Erica. "This woman is obstructing an investigation," Ridge said, gesturing toward Erica. "She's refusing to cooperate." The conductor frowned, looking between Ridge and Erica. "Obstructing? She's been sitting in her seat this whole time. What exactly are you investigating?" Ridge hesitated, realizing too late that he didn't have a legitimate answer. "She's suspicious," he said weakly. "Her behavior doesn't add up." The conductor raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious? She has a valid ticket, and she's not causing any trouble. If anyone's disrupting the passengers, it's you." Ridge's face turned red, but he didn't respond. The conductor turned to Erica, his tone softening. "Are you all right, Mum?" Erica nodded. "I'm fine, thank you, but I'd appreciate it if this man would stop harassing me." The conductor nodded. "Consider it handled," he said, giving Ridge a pointed look. "You're out of line, officer. Return to your post, or I'll be filing a report with management." Ridge opened his mouth to protest but thought better of it. With a muttered curse, he turned and stormed out of the car, his boots echoing down the corridor. The tension in the air slowly dissipated as the passengers returned to their routines, though the unease lingered. Erica sat back down, her hands steady as she picked up her tablet. She knew Ridge wouldn't let this go, but she was ready for whatever came next. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The train glided into the darkness of the countryside, leaving behind the faint glimmers of city lights. The tension in the first-class car had settled somewhat, though a palpable unease lingered in the air. Erica remained in her seat, her gaze fixed on her tablet as she ran through operational systems and route data. Outwardly, she appeared calm and collected, but beneath the surface, her mind was racing. Ridge's behavior was unacceptable, and his aggression made it clear he wouldn't back down easily. She was well aware that men like him didn't let go of perceived slights, especially when their authority was challenged in public. In the adjoining car, Ridge was pacing like a caged animal. His confrontation with Erica had not gone the way he planned, and the sting of being called out by the conductor still burned. He had been so sure that Erica was hiding something, and the fact that she had bested him twice now, first in front of the passengers and then in front of the conductor, made his frustration boil over into anger. He couldn't shake the memory of her calm, unwavering stare or the way she had spoken to him, as though his authority meant nothing. For Ridge, it wasn't just about proving her wrong anymore. It was about regaining control. She had embarrassed him, undermined him, and made him feel powerless. And now he was determined to make her pay for it. He clenched his fists as he reviewed his options. He didn't have the authority to remove her from the train without cause, not after the conductor's warning, but that didn't mean he couldn't find another way to assert himself. He needed to act fast before the train reached its next stop, and she had a chance to report him to higher authorities. Erica, meanwhile, kept a watchful eye on her surroundings. She had expected Ridge to make another move, but his absence from the first-class car gave her a brief reprieve. She used the time to think through her next steps. If Ridge attempted to escalate the situation again, she needed to be ready, not just to defend herself but to take decisive action. She glanced at the emergency control interface on her tablet. As a senior operations manager, she had the ability to override certain train functions in the event of an emergency. It was a power she rarely used, but she was prepared to exercise it if Ridge's behavior continued to pose a threat to her or the passengers. The train began to slow as it approached a remote maintenance station, a brief stop on the route designed for refueling and inspections. It was an unusual stop for a passenger train, and Erica suspected that Ridge had something to do with it. She tensed, her grip on her tablet tightening as the train came to a halt. The lights in the carriage dimmed slightly, a sign that the train had switched to auxiliary power. The murmur of passengers grew louder as they looked around, confused by the unscheduled stop. The door to the first-class car slid open, and Ridge strode in, his expression grim and determined. He was accompanied by two other security personnel, men Erica didn't recognize but assumed were part of the station's local team. The sight of him flanked by reinforcements sent a ripple of unease through the car. Passengers exchanged worried glances, their previous discomfort giving way to outright concern. "Everyone stay seated," Ridge barked, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "This is a routine security check. We'll be inspecting the carriage and conducting a passenger review." Erica set her tablet down, her instincts screaming that this was anything but routine. Ridge wasn't just trying to reassert his authority. He was escalating the situation to an entirely new level. She watched as he and his colleagues began moving through the carriage, asking passengers for identification and inspecting their belongings. The passengers complied reluctantly, their unease growing with each passing moment. When Ridge finally reached Erica's seat, he stopped, his eyes narrowing as he looked down at her. "Ms. Blake," he said, his tone dripping with mock politeness, "I'm going to need you to step off the train." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Erica met his gaze, her expression calm but unyielding. "And why would I do that?" she asked evenly. "This is a security matter," Ridge replied. "I've received word that you may be in possession of unauthorized equipment. For the safety of the train and its passengers, I need you to come with me." Erica knew he was bluffing. There was no way he had received any such word. Her tablet was company issued, and its use was well within her rights. But she also knew that refusing to comply outright could escalate the situation further. She needed to tread carefully, to play the long game. "I'll cooperate," she said, rising from her seat, "but only because I don't want to cause any further disruption for these passengers." Her measured response seemed to catch Ridge off guard, but he quickly masked his surprise with a smirk. "Smart choice," he said, stepping aside to let her pass. As Erica moved toward the door, she noticed the worried looks of the passengers. A few seemed on the verge of speaking up, but she gave them a reassuring nod, silently urging them to stay seated. The last thing she wanted was for anyone else to get involved and potentially put themselves in harm's way. Ridge led her off the train and onto the dimly lit platform of the maintenance station. The air was cool and heavy with the smell of oil and metal. The two security personnel flanked her, their expressions unreadable. Ridge stopped a few paces away from the train, crossing his arms as he turned to face her. "Empty your bag," he ordered. Erica raised an eyebrow. "Is this really necessary?" she asked. "You've already searched my belongings once." "Empty it," Ridge repeated, his tone brooking no argument. Sighing, Erica set her satchel on a nearby bench and began pulling out its contents. She placed her book, scarf, water bottle, and charger in a neat row, followed by her tablet. Ridge stepped forward, picking up the tablet and holding it up to the light as though it would reveal some hidden secret. "This is company property," Erica said, her voice steady. "It's part of my job. We'll see about that," Ridge muttered. He turned to one of the security personnel. "Run this through the scanner. Let's make sure she's telling the truth." The man hesitated, glancing at Erica as though questioning the legitimacy of Ridge's orders. But Ridge's glare left no room for dissent, and the man took the tablet, disappearing into the station building. Erica crossed her arms, meeting Ridge's gaze head-on. "You're overstepping, officer," she said. "You know as well as I do that you have no authority to confiscate my equipment without cause." "I'm doing my job," Ridge snapped. "Something you seem to think you're above. And what exactly is your job?" Erica shot back. "Harassing passengers? Abusing your position? Or is it just about proving a point?" Her words struck a nerve, and Ridge took a step closer, his posture menacing. "Watch yourself," he warned. "You might think you're untouchable, but I can make things very difficult for you." Erica refused to back down. "You've already done that," she said. "But here's the difference. I know how to handle difficult situations." "Do you?" Before Ridge could respond, the security officer returned, holding the tablet with an awkward expression. "It's clean," he said, handing it back to Erica. "No unauthorized software, no flagged data. It's exactly what she said it is." Ridge's face darkened, his frustration boiling over. "Fine," he spat. "Take your things and get back on the train. But don't think this is over." Erica gathered her belongings, her movements deliberate and composed. As she stepped back onto the train, she could feel the eyes of the passengers on her, their silent support bolstering her resolve. She returned to a seat, setting her satchel down and picking up her tablet once more. The train began to move, the tension in the car slowly dissipating as the lights brightened. Erica kept her gaze on the window, watching as the maintenance station faded into the distance. Ridge might think he had won some small victory, but she knew better. He had revealed his true character, and she had documented every moment of it. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The train roared forward into the depths of the night, its steady rhythm cutting through the silence of the countryside. Inside the first-class car, the air was thick with tension. The passengers, though trying to resume their routines, remained on edge after the confrontation between Ridge and Erica. Conversations were hushed, glances furtive, and the faint murmur of unease rippled through the car. Erica sat in her seat, outwardly calm, but inwardly calculating her next move. Ridge's behavior had crossed the line into outright harassment, and his determination to undermine her was as clear as the dim stars flickering outside the window. This wasn't just about her authority being challenged. It was about safety, hers and the passengers. Across the train, Ridge was in the security compartment, seething. He paced back and forth, his mind racing as he tried to figure out his next move. His previous attempts to unseat Erica had failed spectacularly, leaving him embarrassed and worse, looking incompetent in front of the passengers and his colleagues. But Ridge wasn't the type to let humiliation deter him. To him, it was a matter of pride now, a battle he needed to win. Erica had become his nemesis, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she had refused to bow to his authority. Ridge couldn't stand the way she looked at him with calm defiance, as if she were untouchable. He needed to reassert control, needed to prove to her and everyone else that he was in charge. The radio on the desk in front of him crackled, breaking his frantic thoughts. It was one of the maintenance station's security officers. "All systems checked out clean, Officer Ridge," the voice said. "The tablet is just what she said. Company issued, nothing unusual. No reason to hold her further." Ridge snatched up the radio, his frustration boiling over. "I don't care if everything checks out," he barked. "She's hiding something. I know it. There's no way someone like her just happens to be traveling on this train for work. Keep an eye on her if you see anything suspicious." The line went silent, the officer clearly hesitant to indulge Ridge's baseless accusations further. Ridge slammed the radio down, the sound echoing through the small compartment. His frustration had turned into obsession. He couldn't let this go. There had to be a way to bring her down, to expose her for whatever it was he was convinced she was hiding. At that moment, Ridge's eyes fell on the train's internal systems panel mounted on the wall. It displayed everything from passenger counts to operational controls. An idea began to form in his mind. If he couldn't catch Erica in the act of wrongdoing, he could manufacture a scenario where she looked guilty. It wasn't ideal, but Ridge had long since stopped caring about right and wrong. This was about power, and he was willing to do whatever it took to regain it. Meanwhile, Erica remained vigilant, her tablet resting on her lap as she monitored the train systems. She had suspected that Ridge wouldn't let things go, and her instincts were rarely wrong. The man's aggression wasn't just a flaw in his character. It was a danger to everyone on board. She was already drafting a formal report in her mind, detailing his behavior and the risks he posed. But first, she needed to get through the rest of the journey without allowing him to escalate the situation further. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flicker of the overhead lights. The carriage briefly plunged into darkness before the emergency lighting kicked in, casting an eerie red glow across the car. The passengers gasped in alarm, their unease shifting into outright panic. Erica's heart leapt, but her mind immediately shifted into problem-solving mode. Something was wrong. She glanced down at her tablet, her fingers moving quickly over the interface to access the train's systems. As she scanned the data, her stomach sank. The train's brakes had been partially engaged, forcing it to slow to a crawl. At the same time, an override had been activated, locking the doors to all the carriages. This wasn't a technical malfunction. It was deliberate. Someone had tampered with the controls. Her suspicions immediately fell on Ridge. She glanced toward the door, half expecting him to storm in and gloat. But the door remained closed, and the only sound was the hushed murmurs of the passengers, growing louder with each passing moment. Erica took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't solve anything. She needed to take control of the situation before Ridge had a chance to use it against her. Standing, she addressed the passengers in a firm but reassuring voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. There's been a minor technical issue, but I'm working to resolve it. I assure you, there's no need to panic." Her words seemed to have a calming effect, though the tension in the air remained. Erica moved to the intercom panel at the front of the car and pressed the button to connect to the conductor. The line crackled for a moment before his voice came through. "Erica, what's going on?" he asked, his tone laced with concern. "We're losing speed, and the doors are locked. Is this some kind of system test?" "No," Erica replied, her voice clipped. This isn't a test. Someone's tampered with the controls. I'm trying to override the system from my tablet, but I need you to keep the passengers calm while I sort this out." The conductor hesitated. "Do you think this has anything to do with Ridge?" Erica's jaw tightened. "It's highly likely. Keep an eye on him, and don't let him near the control panel. I'll handle things from here." She ended the call and returned to her seat, her fingers flying over the tablet's interface as she worked to regain control of the train. Whoever had tampered with the system had done so with precision, but they hadn't anticipated her level of access. Within moments, she managed to disable the brake override and restore the train's speed. The lights flickered back to full brightness, and the passengers let out a collective sigh of relief. But the doors remained locked, and Erica knew that was no accident. Ridge was playing a dangerous game, and she needed to put an end to it before someone got hurt. Just as she was about to make another attempt at unlocking the doors, the carriage door slid open, and Ridge stepped inside. His expression was smug, his posture oozing false confidence. He clapped his hands once, the sound sharp and jarring. "Well done, Ms. Blake," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You fixed the brakes. Impressive. But I think we both know that you're in over your head." Erica straightened, her gaze locking onto his. "What are you doing, Ridge?" she demanded. "This isn't about security anymore. You're endangering the passengers?" Ridge smirked. "Endangering? Hardly. I'm just doing my job, making sure everyone on this train is who they say they are. Can you say the same?" Her eyes narrowed. "I know exactly who I am, and I know exactly what you're doing. This stops now." "Does it?" Ridge stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one causing all the problems. Locked doors, emergency lights. Sounds like sabotage to me." Erica's heart pounded, but she refused to let him see her fear. "You're grasping at straws," she said. "The only one sabotaging this train is you, and I have the evidence to prove it." Ridge's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "Evidence can be misinterpreted," he said, "especially when it comes from someone with as much to lose as you." Before Erica could respond, a loud banging echoed from the rear of the car. The passengers turned in alarm, their unease reignited. Ridge's expression hardened, and he turned to the source of the noise, his hand instinctively moving toward the baton clipped to his belt. Erica seized the moment. "That's enough, Ridge," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "You've endangered these passengers long enough. I'm taking control of this train." Ridge spun back toward her, his face contorted with rage. "You don't have the authority." "I do," Erica interrupted, raising her tablet. "And I've just locked you out of the system. Whatever game you're playing, it's..." For a moment, Ridge looked as though he might lunge at her, but the sound of the conductor's voice over the intercom stopped him in his tracks. "Security officers to the first-class car," the conductor announced. "Officer Ridge is to be detained for misconduct. This is a direct order from Central Command." The blood drained from Ridge's face as two security officers entered the car, their expressions grim. They moved toward him, their intent clear. Ridge took a step back, his defiance giving way to desperation. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice echoing through the car. "I was just doing my job." "Your job is to protect these passengers," Erica said, her voice cold, "not terrorize them." The officers reached Ridge, taking him by the arms and leading him toward the door. He struggled briefly, but it was no use. As he was escorted out, the passengers erupted into quiet applause, their relief palpable. Erica sank back into her seat, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline began to wear off. The train's speed returned to normal, and the lights brightened fully. Order had been restored, but the events of the night would leave a lasting impact. She glanced down at her tablet, the screen displaying a summary of the train's operational status. Everything was back on track, but Erica knew that this was just the beginning. Ridge would face consequences for his actions, and she would ensure that the system that allowed him to abuse his power would be held accountable as well. The train pressed on through the night, its path steady and unwavering. just like Erica. The train barreled onward through the darkness, its rhythmic clatter over the tracks a stark contrast to the electric tension hanging in the air. Though Ridge had been removed from the first-class car and detained by the security team, his presence still loomed like a shadow. Erica sat upright in her seat, her tablet resting on her lap, her mind laser-focused on ensuring the remainder of the journey unfolded without further incident. The passengers had begun to settle back into their routines, though occasional murmurs of conversation and darting glances toward the door revealed their unease. They weren't just witnesses to a confrontation anymore. They had been participants in a volatile standoff that could have ended far worse. But Erica knew this wasn't over. She glanced at her tablet, the digital interface displaying the train's operational status. Everything appeared stable now. Brakes functioning, lights restored, the locked doors overridden. But the unease in her chest didn't subside. She had learned to trust her instincts, and every fiber of her being told her that Ridge wouldn't back down so easily. Men like him rarely did. They clung to their authority with a ferocity that blinded them to reason. And Ridge had proven that his obsession with control outweighed any sense of responsibility to the safety of others. The train intercom crackled to life, interrupting her thoughts. "Miss Blake, this is the conductor," the familiar voice said, tinged with urgency. "We've got a situation." Ridge managed to slip away from security. Erica stiffened, her grip on the tablet tightening. "What do you mean he slipped away?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. During the transfer to the rear compartment, the conductor replied, his voice low and hurried. "He overpowered one of the officers and fled. We've locked down as much of the train as we can, but he's somewhere on board. I've ordered all staff to stay on alert." Erica exhaled slowly, her mind racing. Ridge wasn't just a threat to her now. He was a loose cannon with nothing left to lose. That made him even more dangerous. She had dealt with desperate people before, but the confined space of the train, combined with Ridge's escalating aggression, created a volatile situation that could spiral out of control in an instant. "Understood," she said, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her chest. "I'll monitor the systems from here. Keep me updated." She ended the call and immediately began scanning the train's surveillance feeds through her tablet. The onboard cameras provided a fragmented view of the various compartments. Passengers seated quietly, security personnel patrolling the aisles, staff members conferring in hushed tones. But there was no sign of Ridge. He had vanished into the labyrinth of the train, and Erica knew he was biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike. The passengers in the first-class car had noticed her heightened focus, their murmurs growing louder as they exchanged worried glances. Erica stood, her presence commanding attention as she addressed them. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice firm but calm, "I need everyone to remain in their seats and stay calm. There is a security matter being handled, and I assure you that your safety is my top priority." Though her words were meant to reassure, the unease in the room deepened. A few passengers nodded, their trust in her evident, but others fidgeted nervously, their eyes darting toward the doors. Erica couldn't blame them. They had already endured one major disruption, and the idea that the instigator was still somewhere on board was enough to unsettle even the most composed among them. She returned to her seat and resumed her surveillance, her fingers flying over the tablet as she accessed more detailed schematics of the train. If Ridge was hiding, he couldn't stay hidden for long, not with the tools she had at her disposal. She began systematically locking down sections of the train, restricting access to key areas to prevent him from moving freely. Her actions were calculated and precise, designed to corner him without causing unnecessary panic. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the car, sending a jolt of alarm through the passengers. Erica's head snapped up, her eyes scanning the room for the source of the noise. It had come from the adjoining car, the heavy metallic sound unmistakable. Ridge was making his move. Erica stood again, her pulse quickening but her expression resolute. She moved to the door leading to the next car, pausing briefly to address the passengers. "Stay here," she said, her voice steady. she said firmly. "Do not follow me. I'll handle this." Without waiting for a response, she stepped through the door and into the dimly lit corridor of the adjoining car. The air was cooler here, the hum of the train's engine louder. She moved carefully, her eyes darting to every shadow, every corner where Ridge might be hiding. Her tablet remained in her hand, its interface glowing faintly as she monitored the train's systems in real time. As she advanced, she spotted movement at the far end of the car. Ridge stepped into view, his figure silhouetted against the faint emergency lighting. His posture was tense, his shoulders squared, and in his hand he held a crowbar, likely taken from the maintenance station during their earlier stop. His eyes glinted with a mix of anger and desperation, the expression of a man pushed to his limits. "Miss Blake," he said, his voice low and mocking. "We meet again." Erica stopped a safe distance away, her gaze steady as she assessed the situation. "It's over, Ridge," she said calmly. "You've endangered this train and its passengers long enough. Put the crowbar down and surrender." Ridge laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. "Surrender? To you? That's not how this ends. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Waving your authority around like it makes you untouchable. But you're just like everyone else. Nothing without that tablet in your hands." Erica's grip on the tablet tightened, but she didn't rise to his bait. "This isn't about me, Ridge," she said. "It's about the lives you're putting at risk. Look around you. This isn't a game. These are real people with families, with lives that you're jeopardizing because you can't handle losing control." Her words struck a nerve, and Ridge's expression twisted with rage. He took a step closer, raising the crowbar slightly. "Don't lecture me," he snarled. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Erica replied, her voice unwavering. "I know you've let your pride blind you to your responsibilities, and I know you've already lost this fight." Ridge hesitated, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. For a moment, Erica thought he might actually back down, but then his grip on the crowbar tightened, and he lunged toward her with a burst of reckless aggression. Erica reacted instantly. She sidestepped his charge, using the narrow space of the corridor to her advantage. As Ridge stumbled past her, she swung her tablet in a wide arc, striking his wrist with enough force to make him drop the crowbar. The metal clattered to the floor, the sound sharp and jarring. Ridge spun around, his movements wild and uncoordinated. He swung at her with his fists, but Erica ducked under the blow, her years of self-defense training kicking in. She used his momentum against him, shoving him into the wall of the car. He hit it with a grunt, momentarily stunned. "Stay down, Ridge," she warned, her voice cold. "This is your last chance." But Ridge wasn't listening. With a roar of frustration, he pushed off the wall and charged at her again. This time, Erica didn't hold back. She stepped into his attack, catching him off guard with a sharp elbow to his ribs. The force of the blow sent him stumbling backward, and he tripped over the crowbar, landing hard on the floor. Before he could recover, the door at the far end of the car burst open, and two security officers stormed in, their weapons drawn. They moved quickly, pinning Ridge to the ground and cuffing his hands behind his back. He struggled briefly, but it was clear he had no fight left in him. Erica stepped back, her breathing heavy but controlled. She watched as Ridge was hauled to his feet, his face a mask of defeat. The officers led him toward the rear of the train, their movements efficient and practiced. As the door closed behind them, Erica allowed herself a moment to exhale. The danger was over, and the train could finally complete its journey in peace. She retrieved her tablet from the floor, its screen still glowing faintly, and returned to the first-class car. The passengers erupted into quiet applause as she entered, their relief and gratitude evident. Erica offered a small, tired smile, but she didn't linger. There was still work to be done. She returned to her seat, her fingers moving over the tablet as she ensured that every system was functioning properly. The train pressed on through the night, its path steady and unwavering. And so was Erica. The train sped through the final stretch of its journey, the distant lights of the city coming into view like faint embers on the horizon. Inside the first-class car, the tension had finally begun to dissipate. Passengers who had been too rattled to speak during the earlier events now whispered among themselves, their relief palpable. Though a calm had settled over the car, an air of reflection lingered, an acknowledgement of the chaos they had endured and the person who had ensured their safety. All eyes occasionally flickered to Erica, who sat in her seat, her tablet on her lap as she reviewed the train's logs one final time. Erica herself remained composed, though exhaustion tugged at the edges of her mind. She had been through her share of crises over the years, but this one had felt personal in a way she couldn't fully articulate. Ridge's actions weren't just an abuse of power. They had been a direct attack on her authority, her professionalism, and ultimately, her very presence in the space he believed he controlled. She had faced discrimination and bias before, but rarely had it escalated to such blatant hostility and physical danger. And yet, as she glanced at the serene faces of the passengers around her, she felt a quiet pride. She had not only stood her ground, but had protected these people from the consequences of one man's reckless obsession. Her thoughts were interrupted as the intercom crackled to life. "Attention passengers," came the conductor's voice, calm and reassuring. "We're approaching our final stop. We'll be arriving at the central station in approximately 10 minutes. On behalf of the entire team, we thank you for your patience and understanding during tonight's journey." The passengers exchanged murmurs of relief, their anticipation of solid ground growing. Some began gathering their belongings, preparing to disembark as soon as the train reached the station. Erica, however, remained seated, her gaze fixed out the window as the city lights grew brighter. The conductor's voice returned, but this time it wasn't an announcement to the passengers. "Miss Blake," he said, his tone carrying a note of respect, "could you join me at the front of the train? There's something you should see." Erica hesitated for a moment, then stood, her movements deliberate. The passengers watched her go, some nodding in silent gratitude as she passed. She acknowledged them with a small smile before exiting the car and making her way toward the front of the train. The walk to the conductor's compartment felt longer than usual, the faint hum of the train and the rhythmic clatter of the tracks providing the only sound. As she approached the door, it slid open, revealing the conductor standing near the control panel. His expression was solemn but tinged with relief. "Miss Blake," he began, gesturing to a nearby monitor. "You might want to see this." Erica stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the screen. It displayed footage from the train surveillance cameras, specifically from the rear compartment where Ridge was being held. The disgraced officer sat slumped against the wall, his hands cuffed behind him and his head bowed. Two security officers stood nearby, their postures rigid as they kept watch. The conductor adjusted the feed, pulling up audio from the compartment. Ridge's voice came through faintly, muffled but audible. He was muttering to himself, his words a mixture of anger and self-pity. "They don't get it." Ridge spat, his voice laced with venom. "I was doing my job, keeping everyone safe. But no, she had to come in here, acting like she runs the place. Like she's better than me. She doesn't belong here. None of them do." Erica's jaw tightened, her breath catching in her throat. She had known Ridge harbored biases, but hearing him vocalize them with such blatant contempt was a chilling confirmation of what she had suspected all along. The conductor glanced at her, his expression apologetic. "I thought you should hear it," he said quietly. "This recording will be submitted with the incident report. He'll never work in security or anywhere near a position of authority again." Erica nodded, her voice steady but low. "Thank you for showing me." The conductor hesitated, then added, "And thank you, Miss Blake, for everything. I don't know what would have happened tonight if you hadn't been here." Erica gave a small, tired smile. "I was just doing my job," she said simply. But as she turned to leave, she paused, her hand resting on the edge of the doorframe. "Make sure the passengers know this train will always prioritize their safety. That's what matters most." The conductor nodded, and Erica made her way back to the first-class car. The train was now slowing, the bright lights of the central station flooding the windows as it approached the platform. Passengers began standing, collecting their bags and coats, their faces showing relief at the journey's end. Erica remained seated until the train came to a full stop, the hiss of the brakes signaling their arrival. As the doors opened, she stood and moved toward the exit, blending into the flow of passengers disembarking onto the bustling platform. The station was alive with activity, the sounds of announcements echoing through the cavernous space and the hum of conversations filling the air. Erica took a deep breath, the cool night air mixing with the faint scent of coffee and metal. Before she could step away, a voice called out behind her, "Ms. Blake." She turned to see one of the first-class passengers approaching, a middle-aged woman who had been seated a few rows behind her during the journey. The woman hesitated, her expression a mix of gratitude and hesitation. "I just wanted to say, thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "What you did tonight, it was brave. I don't think any of us will forget it." Erica nodded, her smile warm but reserved. "I appreciate that," she replied. "I'm just glad everyone made it through safely." The woman hesitated again, then extended her hand. "Well, thank you, all the same. You made a difference tonight." Erica shook the woman's hand, her grip firm but gentle. "Take care," she said, before turning and disappearing into the crowd. As she walked through the station, her mind raced with thoughts of what had transpired. Ridge would face the consequences of his actions. Of that, she was certain. But the deeper issues his behavior highlighted wouldn't be resolved so easily. There was